Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next comment question comes from Arcom98 in response to the EPS 16 A Potted History Restoration Part 1 video I did. And I don't say when I did this, but I'm gathering it's probably April or May 2022. And he writes, lured by the sampling feature, I bought an EPS instead of a Korg M1 back in the 1980s. I was also invested in Betamax machines and the tapes were advertised picture superiority over VHS. Needless to say, I don't recommend anyone taking stock market tips from me. It's true, Betamax was a superior picture over VHS. However, the manufacturers didn't. I think it was it Sony that did Betamax, and they didn't want to license it, so it kind of died a death. Whereas VHS was licensed to everybody. Interesting. I do note not to take stock market tips, by the way. But the EPS and the M1 were very, very different beasts. That's probably the biggest issue, or the biggest thing to take away from this. Yes, everyone ran to the Korg dealer to get their M1, but the M1 can't sample. The EPS can build a tone without being, can build a sound without a tone being present, because you can sample and you can take bits of the sample to actually create what it is you're trying to do. Now, somebody wrote on another post that these are very different keyboards. Admittedly, it was different keyboards, but the sentiments still follow for this situation. They have different audiences, but the M1 was probably more in tune with the market at the time than the Ensoniq machine instrument was. But I'm not saying the Ensoniq instrument wasn't functional. It was. It just wasn't in tune with where the market was at that point in time. Next comment or question comes from Dub Station 0. If you're not in the dance scene, I don't know who else. And this was in response to basic programming tips for the Roland JX-8P, a video I did in June 2021. And what can I say? Can you program the JX-8P via MIDI CC is the question. Also, can you control any of the parameters via MIDI CC during a performance, i.e. filter cutoff? Can you switch between the two? Is it in essence the functionality of the right to protect switch? Now, you got to remember with the JX-8P and when it came out, there were a lot of things in flux in terms of how we actually do remote control of keyboards. And the JX-8P was pre many mainstream implementations of CC that you might see around nowadays. So the bottom line is you can't use CC to control it, or purely CC to control it, and it doesn't respond to sysx commands. So now what you had to do was you had to use the PG800 programmer which interacts with the synth in real time. So it's kind of doing CC, but it's not CC. But these cost pretty much as a second-hand JX-8P would cost if you were to go and buy it nowadays. the alternatives is you can get both an iPad and computer editors that you can plug into your JX-8P, which will do the same thing. And I have to be honest and say, although I haven't tested either of these myself, because the JX-8P that I was playing with on the channel on the videos that you saw was lent to me by somebody else. It wasn't my JX-8P to do with as I will. So, but I'm led to believe that both of these programmers actually work in real time. So in the background to this, Dubstation Zero then responded and said, so in the last 2 weeks I went down the rabbit hole on the JX-8P, acquired one and did my first soldering repairs, replacing a bunch of buttons successfully. I've ordered a PG-8 programmer from a I can never pronounce that name, and will be replacing the factory EEPROM with the Velkommen operating system module, which does give you CC controller over all the parameters. And I've got to be honest and say the PG-8, which is a replica programming unit from, there were a couple of companies that did this. Retro KViv is one of those companies that did the change. Another one was D-Tronics, I believe, produced a unit for the JX-8P and the JX-10 as well. Anyway, so now what he didn't say is, this is the first time I've heard him say he's going to replace the OS or the EEPROM with the Velkommen kit. Now the interesting thing about Velkommen is that I'm kind of holding on for a reasonable price JX-10, if I'm honest, with either has the Velkommen update or I can fit the Velkommen update to it. But as you've seen from the video, while I see a special place for the JX-8P and where a lot of people hold it in great reveal, and many people who follow the channel, I personally think the JX-10 is a better machine, being in essence two JX-8Ps in the way it generates its tones. Yet the PG-800 is an expensive option, and the aftermarket ones are as good, if not better, than the original, if you can't get hold of the original at a reasonable cost. So, you know, it's a good alternative.